Accommodations. We have Ms. Phyllis Doering, who is the president of the United Post-Polio Survivors and is also a commissioner on the board of Chicago Human Rights Relations Commission. I kind of goofed that. Let me start over with that. A commissioner on the board of the Chicago Human Relations Commission. Phyllis.
Good morning. Today we have on our panel distinguished experts to address the more complex points of the ins and outs of the process of the law. But I would like to address public accommodations from the viewpoint of a consumer. What I want to address is our right to accessible public accommodations, our right to help end the discrimination we face daily. I would like to read you part of the testimony I gave before the City Council when we fought for the passage of the Human Rights Ordinance. As a polio survivor, I have been a person with a disability for over 40 years. I won't expand on that. But it wasn't until recently, in this time span, that I realized that I have civil rights. For years, like other polio survivors and other persons with a disability, I thought that the way to exist was to fight my disability. In other words, it was up to me personally to try harder and to physically overcome the environmental barriers that all persons with a disability face. When confronted with a flight of stairs, I felt I had three choices. One was to somehow force my body to somehow get up those stairs. Two, to ask a favor of someone to physically help me up the stairs. A lot of you in the audience know about that. Three was to withdraw from the situation and therefore from participating in our society. I would like to read you a note from the definition section of the Accessibility Standards Illustrated of Illinois. This note says, characteristics of the built environment rather than the degree of disability determine whether a person is handicapped. A handicap occurs when a person encounters an environmental barrier which prevents or inhibits activities of daily living. For example, narrow toilet doors not affording access to a person in a wheelchair will prevent the employment of that person in a building. Or a child considered able-bodied is handicapped when stranded in a malfunctioning elevator in a high-rise building because the emergency button and telephone are out of reach. The Chicago Human Rights Ordinance before you will help ensure that handicaps are not increased in Chicago. This ordinance before you will recognize the fourth choice when faced with a flight of stairs. The choice that is the right of all human beings in Chicago to not be handicapped by the society that we live in. The law has been passed. The regulations are in place. Now it's up to each and every one of us to help end handicap conditions in Chicago. Because of this law in Chicago, the choice is ours whether we choose to exist or file and enforce our civil rights. Take note that if you don't live in Chicago, the law still applies to you. If discrimination happens to you in Chicago, you can and should file with the Human Relations Commission. Let us all help to end the situation in which potentially productive persons, ourselves, and children are forced by traditional discriminatory, patronistic attitudes and systems to exist in situations of unjust, unwanted dependency, segregation, extreme deprivation, and as second-class citizens. Now I would like to read some excerpts from the rules and regulations governing the Chicago Human Rights Ordinance, the Chicago Fair Housing Ordinance, and the Chicago Commission on Human Relations Enabling Ordinance relating to discrimination against persons with disabilities in places of public accommodations. Examples. It says, the Commission shall interpret the bear with me because I'm not a lawyer, definition of public accommodations so as to facilitate the full integration of the classes of people protected by the Chicago Human Rights Ordinance. Examples of public accommodations include, but are not limited to, daycare, senior citizen centers, shelters, legal service agencies, and other service agencies, transportation facilities, licensing bureaus, courtrooms, and any other governmental office open to the general public, inns, motels, and hotels, restaurants, bars, or other establishments serving food and drink. An example, if you're sight impaired, there is no Braille menu, someone must read that menu to you. Accommodations have to be there. If you can't get into something, it's discrimination, it's segregation. You have rights under the Human Rights Ordinance. Drugstores, barber shops, laundromats. How many times while I'm reading these things are people saying, I have problems with that? We don't have to have those problems. We can file. I don't guarantee in every case, and nobody can guarantee in every case that it's going to work. But we can get rid of a lot of it. Grocery stores, shopping centers, clothing stores, or other retail sale establishments, public and private schools, preschool, grammar schools, secondary schools, preparatory schools, vocational schools, universities, museums, libraries, galleries, and other similar public places of public collections of display. We can go see it, or we can go touch it. We can be there. Office buildings, parking structures, and lots. You should be, we parked today in the parking lot, it said, no vans over 6 feet. That means that people with a pop-top van because of the wheelchair could not park there. Is that discrimination? I think people here should be able to answer that. We should be able to park in public parking lots. Parks and zoos, hospitals, and clinics. If you go to the doctor's office or the clinic and have a problem with public accommodation, it's discrimination. Theaters, concert halls, ballparks, stadiums, and other places of entertainment or exhibit. Churches, synagogues, or other places of worship. And that not just includes if you go to worship. It includes a public meeting being held in those. If you can't get in, if you don't have an interpreter, we have a right to participate in our society. There's more. I don't know how my time is going. How's my time going? This is in all of your packets. You have it. A point I would like to make about undue hardship, and we have to prove, they have to prove, if you file against someone, that it's undue hardship. We don't have to prove that they can afford it. One last point. I would like to tell you that when we experience discrimination in public accommodations, all we have to do, I would like to tell you that all we have to do is call the Human Relations Commission and report it, and they will take care of it. The conditions in the world we live are not yet to the point that violations of our human rights can be handled over the phone. Maybe someday, I hope, that the consciousness of all people in the world will be so strong about the rights of others, of all people, that this can and will happen. But for the time being, you must file. It's up to you to enforce the law. We don't have to ask for favors. We have a law. It's up to you to help end handicap conditions in Chicago. Thank you.